Hi, my name is John.
And my name is Lloyd.
And we're the hosts of The Pint,
a pop culture podcast.
Lloyd, if you had to tell any of the people out there that might be listening to The Pint for the first time about anything unsavory or disconcerting we might do on the show, what would you warn them about?
Well, sometimes we drop spoilers, and sometimes we swear like motherfucking sailors.
Fuck yeah, we do. You heard it from him. You've been warned.
Listen in.
What do you get when the ultimate Shining fan gets to do an episode on The Shining? This episode of The Pint. My name is John.
Hell yeah. My name is Lloyd.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about 1980s, not 1997's TV miniseries The Shining. Let's talk about 1980s The Shining here on Frigid February.
I am ready to fucking party.
I guess we're gonna party.
Fuck yeah!
Now, Manster, you're taking production on this one because you've got all kinds of books. You got all kinds of Blu-rays, all kinds of 4Ks, everything.
And I really wish that I had had the time necessary to read that book. I did get into it a little bit, and I did take notes, and then I was like, you know what? I have to take notes. I'd rather do it on the computer. So I did read some of the book, and I got a lot of stuff out of it, but I can't wait to dive into that thing. We could spread this out to 2 or 3 episodes. Because, you know, we're going to do our normal thing and talk cast and production and the plot, but you could talk about this movie for days.
Well, there's a lot of movies like that. Yeah.
All right. So released on May 23rd, 1980. Very limited, small release. Directed by Stanley Kubrick, film director extraordinaire. He is a definition of an auteur. So before this, he did Spartacus, Lolita, Dr. Strangelove, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon. Did you ever see that, Barry Lyndon?
No, but I know that this movie was a desperate, clutch for him to have a hit because Barry Lyndon, did so badly in the box office. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really want to see that. I have not seen it either.
No.
Screenplay by Kubrick and also author Diane Johnson. I looked up her stuff. I didn't know a single thing, but, Kubrick picked her. He's meticulous. We'll get into a lot of that. Kubrick himself, I figured I'll talk about the man because he's a monster. And he's a fucking son of a bitch on on set.
he fucked up Shelley Duvall pretty good, and you can see it. You can see it in this movie.
On this movie for sure, and not just her. So he's from the Bronx. He dropped out of high school, became the youngest ever staff photographer at Look magazine. He's 16 years old or whatever. Crazy. There he became interested in film, worked on some low budget and indie stuff, and then a couple of feature films, and all of a sudden just took the film industry by storm. Before he was even 30 years old, he was one of the top directors in the world by 35. And then in 1966, he told a friend he wanted to make the world's scariest movie, that if you could sit through it, you'd get your money back.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's a fucking dumbass idea because, then you never make your money. But it shows his desire to just be the best and create the best possible work. In 1970, amazingly, he got a 3-picture deal with Warner Brothers, and he had full autonomy over the pictures. Full. That means once they approve the script, they don't see anything until it's ready to release.
Yeah.
Who does that? No one does that. No one will do that anymore.
Tarantino, maybe. Spielberg might get that to an extent, but maybe. It's not common, that's for sure.
Yeah. And during this time, and this is very, very crucial to the movie itself, to the look and feel of this movie, in 1974, Garrett Brown invented the Steadicam. And I'm pretty sure we've all heard of the Steadicam, at least, just the terminology. But it was a way to stabilize movement shots and basically allowed for like really quick, smooth, fluid camera movements. And Kubrick did become one of the first customers. He snatched one up. And I guess the first use of this was in 3 movies in 1976, Bound for Glory, Marathon Man.
Ooh, we did that one.
Which we did in another movie, which I believe we will do, called Rocky.
Yes, we're doing Rocky
Yes.
over on the Patreon as a video series. Yep.
Yep. So fun fact, during his post-production on Clockwork Orange, he was offered The Exorcist, which he turned down. He did not do The Exorcist. He was, in turn, actually offered The Exorcist 2 as well, which he turned down, obviously. Fun fact number 2, he never made a movie that wasn't already a novel.
Full Metal Jacket, yeah.
Everything he's ever made was a fully realized story. He did that. He preferred that because he liked to let his first impressions of the book, guide him and like pass that on along to like a viewing audience. So I thought that was interesting. I never knew that. Let's get into the story a little bit by Stephen King. So based on the novel The Shining by Stephen King, which you see a couple of behind me.
I read it in my 20s, yeah.
For you folks who can't see this, obviously I have, 3 or 4 posters, some artwork that John got for me, commissioned for me from our friend Rich Smith.
That's right.
A couple of books. There's a paperback, there's a hardcover, there's this massive Shining, whatever you call that, tome, and a bunch of, John got me these too. You can't see them, but they are Shelley Duvall and Jack Nicholson coasters.
Oh, for CT Horror Fest, right?
I was hemming and hawing at that Horror Fest. Should I get it? No. He's like, he just got them for me.
Yeah.
That's the way John is.
That's it. Stop your thinking.
Yeah.
Let's just plunk down that $30 or whatever it was.
Yeah. I got the yellow. The vinyl is also yellow, so I got the yellow album. And then all these great coasters I got at another Horror Fest. I only have a couple here, but the floor pattern, the carpet pattern.
This is Lloyd's long way of saying he's gay for The Shining.
I'm gay for The Shining. The sad part is I have not read it in years, probably 30 years, and I have to go back
we'll talk about it when we talk about the movie, but like. I was watching this with Heather and she has never read it, and I was kind of telling her about some of the differences. So we'll talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah. And then one more thing, and I know it's got ice, but I do have my bourbon on ice.
Oh, look at that.
Bourbon on the rocks, served to me by a guy named Lloyd, as a matter of fact.
White man's burden.
White man's burden. Yeah. So, all right, back to the book, The Shining. So while he was in Colorado, he stayed at this place called the Stanley Hotel, believe it or not. He and his wife Tabitha, and they were on the last day of the season, just like the beginning of the movie here. And they stayed in a supposedly haunted room, number 217. All right. In the movie, it's 237 for reasons. And he went downstairs while his wife was in bed. He went down to the bar and was served drinks by a bartender named, can you guess?
Lloyd?
No.
Oh.
Grady. A bartender named Grady, right?
Okay.
So basically this deserted environment stimulated his imagination about a novel that was called Dark Shine at the time, about a psychic boy. But he had started it and put it aside because he just couldn't get the setting right. He just couldn't figure out where to set it. And this totally inspired him to make it at a haunted hotel. And there you have it. Unfortunately, it's not the Stanley Hotel in the movie, but he finished this in 1976. And at that time, it was called The Shine. And that was based on, you can probably guess, We All Shine On. Like the
Oh, okay. I
Moon
honestly...
and the Stars and Sun, yeah. John Lennon's lyric. So that's where that came from. And the story mirrored his own frustrations as a writer, wanting to provide for his family, dealing with alcoholism and drug addiction and some fucking nasty emotions that I read about: resentment, anger, hate, violence, all that stuff.
And he notoriously hates this movie. Like, or at least did. I don't know if
he did. He's softened on it over the years.
Yeah.
But he said writing it all down helped helped him get it out of his system, as well as sort of serve as sort of a pseudo confession as to just shit that was in his head.
Right.
So I'm glad he did, and I'm glad he got it out of his head and put it down here. So Warner Brothers received the script in July of '76 and realized how difficult it would be to adapt it. But they knew Kubrick would be able to do it, so they offered him a deal. Now, recall, he was in the middle of his 3-movie deal with full autonomy, but they didn't give him that. And he said, nope. And he wrote not a nasty letter, but he wrote him a letter saying, look, you will not offer me anything unless it meets the terms of our deal with no alterations. So they ended up, King's Group ended up selling it to the Producers Group. So not to Warner Brothers, a bunch of producers called the Producers Group. And they offered the script around. One was Roman Polanski, but he refused because he didn't want to do a horror movie. I guess he had just done Rosemary's Baby, not just, but
yeah,
so he just didn't want to revisit that.
Right, 10 years prior.
Yeah. And then due to the success of Brian De Palma's Carrie, the first Stephen King adaptation.
Yeah,
adaptation. Warner Brothers jumped back in the action, bought up the right from the Producers Group, and gave Kubrick his deal. Now, I won't go into how much they made, but they made some money. So they bought it, sold it, and made money. So good for them. The movie was filmed from 1978 May to July of 1979. That's a long time.
That's a year plus, yeah.
Yeah. So originally, and I actually read some that said it was in October, but I'll go with July. Originally scheduled for a 6-month production, but Kubrick, being the ultimate perfectionist, and some other unforeseen events, there was some fires and stuff that delayed it to, like 14 months or whatever.
Angelica Houston lived with Jack Nicholson at the time, and she said it was common that he would just come home and collapse on the bed and fall asleep until the next morning when he was supposed to get up to go back to the set. Like she said, it just happened all the time when he was filming The Shining.
Yep. And they don't get enough credit, even Nicholson and, Shelley Duvall, because this movie is all about Kubrick.
Yeah. Kubrick and Stephen King to an extent, but Kubrick mostly, yeah.
Yep. So filmed, some of the locations, the Timberline Lodge in Mount Hood, Oregon, that served as the exterior of the hotel, of the Overlook Hotel. You got the majestic facade and the surrounding scenery, instantly recognizable. That I saw, I don't know if you ever seen any making of, but that whole face of the hotel is just like one flat, like when you go to those old Hollywood ranches and everything's just one flat panel. That's what that was.
I started watching the making of, and then I just didn't get through it. But because I know there's some documentaries and stuff about this.
There's a lot. There's a lot
check
of stuff.
them out. Yeah,
there's one I won't get into too much, but it talks about all kinds of crazy stuff that you would never pick up. Native American stuff, Minotaur stuff.
Heather is very into that kind of stuff, and she was talking about that stuff because she maybe had seen that documentary or knew about a lot of the conspiracies. Like I know one of them is there's a big thing about doubles, like the twins, the two different Jacks, and
yep.
When they're walking through the hotel in the beginning, and Stuart Ullman says goodbye to those two girls. The two girls look very similar. Mm-hmm. There's something about duality.
There's very, very much so, and that's quite obvious even in the normal plot of the movie.
Yeah.
And there's another thing that goes with that. If you take the movie front to back and back to front, flip them both around and play them on top of each other. So one's going backwards, one's going forwards. There's some crazy shit that lines up absolutely perfectly, where Nicholson will be right in the middle of what's his name? Grady, and his face appears in the middle of things, and it's freaky how much it almost looks like it was intentional.
Right.
So anyway, back to the filming. And then the individual rooms were taken just from people sending in photos of hotel rooms all over the country.
Oh, that's cool.
Kubrick was like, hey, I'm not going to invent a hotel room. I'll just see what's already out there and see what makes sense.
So whoever took a picture of what ended up being room 237
237
in the movie, the color clashing in that room.
Oh,
between the
Right.
walls and the carpets and the bedspread is enough to make you fucking vomit.
That carpet is full of penises too. Did you ever notice that?
I did not. I couldn't notice it because my eyes were rolling in my head because of the color clashes in that room. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. So then some more wide angle aerial shots. You know, the opening sequence with the car driving through the windy road. That was Glacier National Park in Montana. And then a lot of the interiors were done at Elstree Studios in Borehamwood, Hertfordshire.
Hertfordshire. Remember,
Hertfordshire. If
John
you
taught
remember,
us.
Hertfordshire, Hertfordshire, England. Freaking big, elaborate interiors. Look like real hotels, but they're just all sets.
That's cool.
It's really amazing. You know, all the really iconic one, like the hotel lobby, the gold room, the apartment, room 237, the maze, all that stuff was in there. And then at Radlett Aerodome, also in Hertfordshire, was where they did the exterior scenes of the hedge maze. And then it is worth noting that the Overlook Hotel itself is fictional, but it is inspired by Ahwahnee Hotel in Yosemite National Park, which basically has the same overall sort of angled shape, but it's very square looking. It's not as angular as the Overlook is. Some production notes. So Kubrick, as I mentioned before, notorious for his meticulous and demanding filmmaking style, often took numerous takes. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard about this, but I dug into it a little and I was like, oh my God, this guy is a total nutcase. So just a couple of the scenes that he did that were excessive, let's say. So when Dick explains The Shining to Danny over the ice cream, remember it starts as a little telepathic conversation and then they're sitting at a table. That's a 5-minute scene that has to be done in one take. 148 takes.
He almost broke Scatman Carruthers. The Halloran role was originally offered to Slim Pickens, and Slim Pickens worked with him on Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah.
And he told him that the only way he would do it is if he can guarantee him that it wouldn't come anywhere near 100 takes. And he said, I can't tell you that. And he said, no, I'm not doing it.
No, but I got a buddy who will do it.
Yeah. So they got Scatman Carruthers to do it. And he asked him at one point, he said to him, he said, what do you want from me, Mr. Kubrick? And then on Scatman Carruthers' next movie, he worked with Clint Eastwood, who Clint Eastwood is known for doing one take and wrapping. Like, as long as it's usable, he just ends it there. And they said Scatman Carruthers, after the first couple of setups and takes with Clint Eastwood, started crying and was hugging him and holding him, saying, thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. They said, so just the scene, when he's in his, hotel room in, was it Miami?
Yeah.
You know, with those fine black ladies.
Big ass titty afro women on the wall. Yeah.
I was watching with Candy and they were going to that scene and go, oh, here comes the big afro titty ladies.
He's got one above his bed and one across above his TV. Yeah.
Anyway, that scene where the camera zooms on his face, all it is his face, looking reacting to whatever intense feeling that Danny's giving out. Yeah. 60 takes.
Yeah,
60.
That's crazy.
And then one more, the staircase scene with Wendy and Jack. Now, Jack was fucked up, man. I don't mean Nicholson. I just mean Jack the character was fucking scary in that scene.
He's the worst. He's
so bad.
He's the worst. Yeah, we'll talk about it, but he is literally. Yeah, I kind of looked at this movie with a different eye because we're doing the podcast, and he's just the worst.
Yeah, and keep in mind, Shelley Duvall has already had a nervous breakdown and is ready to quit and crying all the time.
Her hair's falling out.
She gifted Kubrick a clump of her hair at the end of shooting. Anyway, that scene took 127 takes.
Yeah, that's insane.
Could you imagine doing that 127 times?
I mean, look, let's be honest, right? We work for a living, so yes, I can imagine people having to do that, but I think that, you know what I mean? An actor's life can't always all be easy, and that's excessive, right? That's because you got to memorize lines, and that scene is lines, physical activity, walking up the stairs backwards, emotion. And you know what? It's a wonderful scene and it's memorable, but are you telling me that that's that is so far different than 119 takes. You know what I mean?
I'm sure. I'm sure probably the 40th take was fine, but
Yes.
but I will tell you, he got whatever he needed to get out of her. He got it.
Yeah.
And so be it, I guess. I'll talk a little about the Steadicam and then the music, and then it's yours, buddy. So the Steadicam is heavily featured in this movie, and it basically gives it this distinctive style that is just so stunning, right? I'll just give you a few that you could try and picture in your mind. The opening aerial sequence with the car driving, that is a Steadicam actually attached to a helicopter.
Yeah. By the way, I want to throw in there, if you don't know about that sequence, which you probably do know, when Ridley Scott made Blade Runner several years later, they wanted a happy ending. The studio wanted the happy ending, which if you've ever seen Blade Runner, the happy ending is them flying out into like a country setting.
Yeah.
He asked Kubrick for footage, and it's just footage from The Shining with the bug, the VW bug taken out of it. So it's just unused footage, but it's the same. So if you next time you watch Blade Runner and you watch the original theatrical cut, those scenes are interspersed with Harrison Ford and Sean Young in the spinner, and then all the scenes of the landscape is all footage from the Shining. Because again, much like you said, I think it was like there was like 100 hours of that footage or some crazy shit, like for what amounts to a 2-minute scene in the movie.
Yeah, right. A really good 2-minute scene. It sets up the sense of foreboding and all this darkness to come, but it's awesome. I especially love it when the camera tilts, like you're kind of like at a 45-degree angle at one point. It's awesome. But one that's obvious is Danny's tricycle ride. They had a Steadicam slung way down low, so as he's driving down the corridors, it just feels like you're there, right? It just feels like you're part of the movement and what's going on there. The closing in on the Grady twin, and they're not twins; they're just sisters.
They are just sisters, yeah.
Yeah. The smooth movement of the Steadicam, makes that kind of unsettling. The scene we just spoke about, Wendy's escape backwards up the staircase. It's very erratic and unsteady, and kind of mirrors Wendy's panic and fear.
I like how she swings the bat at him, but she's holding the bat mid-bat. You know what I mean? And she's just kind of doing these jerky motions.
Yeah.
Grab the bat. Grab the bat at the bottom.
Too much choking up.
You're not bunting. You have to protect yourself from your crazy husband. Go all the way to the bottom and get some arm into it. She's holding it in the middle.
Right in the middle.
And she's just kind of like
these tiny little swats. It's like you're trying to swat a fly. And then finally, and probably most obviously, is the hedge maze chase. There's no way you can film that at the time with whatever, what's the word I'm looking for?
Old camera system or
any other camera technique. That's what I'm looking for. Camera technique. It's just so disorienting. It's just so cool. It's one long uninterrupted take. It's really great. One more thing I'll talk about is the music, created by Wendy Carlos and Rachel Elkind. I guess that was just a partner, but Wendy Carlos is the big one. And where she gets that sound, that's called the Sircon, and it's something that she built. She created it, and it's more of just a controller than an instrument. It just looks like a wooden box, and it looks kind of like a metronome, and it's got a dial on it, and not so much unlike the what was that other one from War of the Worlds?
Oh, a theremin.
A theremin.
Yeah.
You interact with it like that, and there's dials, and you use your hands, and you're moving things around. And she was like pseudo creating the sounds. This was years later.
I thought that was an organ or a synth.
No, it's just this crazy looking box thing that she just created, and she calls it the singing synth because it does get like a vocal quality to it.
So at the beginning of every episode, we usually put a bit of dialogue after the theme and everything, the theme song. But Lloyd gave me a drop from that, so I'm going to play that at the beginning. So now you're going to go, wow, I understand what he's saying.
Right,
That's
you've already heard it.
You've already heard it, and you're like, that wasn't an organ or a synthesizer. WTF?
That's what it was. The Sircon, which is short for circular controller, I believe. that's all I got. There's tons more I could talk about, but I think you're probably getting bored of hearing my voice. So
I love hearing you get excited about something. I'm not bored at all.
all right. Well, why don't you tell us what's in the cast, or who's in the cast, and who all these fuckers are?
All right, let's do it.
Shabuya roll call. Woo.
All right, so I left my notebook at work where I had all my interesting notes, so I'm going to go off of the IMDb, and I am going to tell you things that I remember about these folks. So first of all, we have Jack Nicholson playing Jack Torrance. Of course, we know Jack Nicholson from 5 Easy Pieces, Batman, 1989, Batman, which we did on the Patreon a couple years ago, and The Departed. Shelley Duvall plays Wendy Torrance, Winifred Torrance.
Right, Winifred.
As she introduces herself to Dick Halloran. Shelley Duvall died last year. She has been in a ton of things, but a couple things that I read about her were she was in the film Nashville. She was Olive Oyl in the Robert Altman Popeye movie, and she was the narrator and producer of a Showtime television show for kids that was pretty popular in the 80s for a couple years called Fairy Tale Theater. In 1991, she had 2 music LPs out. One of them was just like, I think, a straight LP, and one of them was a Christmas one. So she actually had a recording career as well. But yeah, Shelley Duvall also, I think, which is very interesting, in the, inaugural Razzie Awards, was nominated for Worst Actress for this movie. And in very rare Razzie history, in 2022, they officially rescinded that and said they made a mistake.
Thank God.
They made a mistake. Her performance is pretty fucking amazing in this because it's almost not a performance. She seems like she's genuinely scared as fuck. And that's pretty famous. But yeah, so the Razzies actually felt bad about putting someone up. Danny Lloyd, the son, Lloyd, plays Danny Torrance. So Danny Torrance is the son, Danny Lloyd is the actor. He was in one movie after this. It was called Will, G. Gordon Liddy. He played G. Gordon Liddy as a little kid. He was in a cameo role in the sequel, Dr. Sleep, which came out a few years ago. In 2004, he became an assistant biology professor at a small community technical college in his hometown in Kentucky. I'm not sure if he's still doing that. He has 4 children, and he does not generally talk about The Shining at all to anybody. He basically just stopped acting.
Can I interject?
Absolutely.
This kid was fucking awesome.
Yes, and he was also told by Stanley Kubrick and everybody on set that they were filming a drama. They did not let him in on any of the horror aspects.
Oh, okay.
So he didn't actually see any of the bodies or any of the horror elements that even when he's made to look like he's seeing it, he was told that he was starring in a family drama because they didn't want to like fuck him up.
Yeah, you already scar that kid for life.
Yeah. So
such a cute kid, and his acting was right on.
He is really good. He was so very good. Let's see. Scatman Carruthers, Benjamin Scatman Carruthers, plays Dick Halloran, as I said before, originally offered to Slim Pickens. Scatman Carruthers was the voice of Hong Kong Phooey in the cartoons. He was the voice of Jazz. He was the voice of Jazz the Autobot and the Transformers series in the 80s and the movie. And he also was in film, and he was a musician, but films he did, film Larry and I did a couple years ago during Black History Month, Truck Turner, and he is also in Twilight Zone, the movie. I want to jump back to Jack Nicholson real quick because I forgot this because I don't have my notes in front of me. There have been a lot of rumors that Robin Williams and Harrison Ford and Robert De Niro were considered for the role of Jack Torrance before. Stanley Kubrick said none of those were true, that they were rumor, but he did admit that if Jack Nicholson said no to this role, he was going to give it to Chris Christopherson.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it might have been good. I don't know. Chris Christopherson had been doing some acting at that point, so I think it might have been interesting.
Can I tell you a secret?
Oh, Jesus. Sure.
I had never seen A Star Is Born.
I've never seen it.
And so I knew it was, famous movie that I should probably see, and I watched it, and I just was not impressed by his acting at all.
No. I've never seen it, and I like him as Whistler and Blade, but, he's a musician first, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Scatman Crothers, remember, if you said it and I missed it, I'm just an idiot. But Sanford and Son.
Yes, he was. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yep. Yes, he was. Barry Nelson plays Stuart Ullman, the manager of the Overlook Hotel. Barry Nelson was in a bunch of stuff. Good-looking guy, but the important thing to mention about Barry Nelson is that Barry Nelson is the first. Listen to this. The first person to play James Bond on screen. There was a TV show in 1954 called Climax with a exclamation point. It is not about coming. It was a anthology series, and they did an episode that was based on Casino Royale. He plays Jimmy Bond, who was an American version of James Bond. He was not the first person to portray James Bond. There was some radio serials, I guess, at some point. But he's the first person to play him on screen, and it is 8 years before Sean Connery played him in the movies.
That is a good nugget.
Right, that's a good nugget.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to look at this movie the same again. All right, a couple more, then we'll move on. Joe Turkel plays Lloyd the bartender, Lloyd. Joe Turkel is probably best known as being Tyrell in Blade Runner. I mentioned Blade Runner before. He was the creator of the replicants in that. He was also in early Stanley Kubrick movie Paths to Glory, and he was in a film from the late 60s called The Devil's Eight that I am only familiar with because I looked at it in the archive one day. I said, this looks pretty fucking cool. I bought it and I haven't watched it yet. So The Devil's Eight. Check it out because I should check it out. The last one I want to mention, because I just think it's an interesting story, is Tony Burton plays Larry Durkin. He only has one scene in this movie. You might recognize Tony Burton immediately as Duke from the Rocky films. He is Apollo Creed's corner man. Tony Burton had a very interesting career. He started as a boxer in the 50s, was a championship Golden Gloves boxer. He ended up going to jail in the 60s on an armed robbery. He got caught for an armed robbery, went to jail for a while, got out of jail, got into acting, and he went to set for a casting call for this film, and he brought a chessboard. He was only supposed to have 2 scenes in this movie. One of them got cut, one did not. He stayed around for 6 months. Reason being is that, did you read this?
No, I didn't, but I know that Kubrick was an avid chess player.
Kubrick kept him on set because the first time they played, Kubrick shut down filming for the day, saw Tony Burton had a chessboard, shut down filming, they played, Tony Burton beat him, and then he kept him on set for like 5 months because whenever he wanted to play chess, he wanted to play him. And Tony Burton said he did not beat Kubrick again after that first time, but Kubrick kept him around. And he said he was fine with it because he said
Did he pay him?
I didn't say, but I'm assuming.
Yeah,
I don't think most people would just stick around for recreational chess. But yeah. So
yeah, Kubrick was nearly a chess master.
Yeah. So they played a lot of chess, and Burton beat him the first time, and I think that earned such respect that he said, "Stick around."
Nice. Was he the guy he talked to on the phone? Like,
yes, the guy who
the snow cat,
the guy who gives who gives Halloran the cat. Yes.
Yeah.
And if you watch the Rocky movies, you will know him immediately. Oh yeah. And he has the famous line in Rocky IV, "Just throw the damn towel." I love that guy. All right, let's get into it. Let's get into the film. We're 33 minutes in, but I knew this was going to be a fucking action-packed motherfucker here on Frigid February.
Yeah.
Get us right into the story on this thing.
All right, so Jack Torrance is arriving at the Overlook Hotel to interview for the position of winter caretaker. The hotel itself is built on an Indian burial ground, which we learn later, and does become completely snowbound in the winters. So he meets with Stuart Ullman, and oh man, there's so many more things to talk about, like the impossible layout of the floor plan of this movie. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but when he walks to Stuart Ullman's office, he's in the lobby. He takes a right. He walks straight down the hall. At the end of the hall, there's a tapestry on the wall, and there are 2 banks of hallways that go left and right, and then there's elevators to the left. But amazingly, he takes a little left, and then just to the right, there's Stuart Ullman's office with a big picture window behind it, brightly lit with outdoor scenery. There's no fucking outdoor there. He's in the middle of the place. So anyway, that's just one of the many, many things, you might want to call them discrepancies or just unsettling things, all on purpose.
Jerry's apartment in Seinfeld also supposedly is impossible with the way the hallway crosses the back of the kitchen.
Yeah.
You'd have to look it up online. I've seen it a few times before, but like I've seen people have tried to draw 3D maps of it, and it doesn't make sense. So yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, he's interviewing with Stuart Ullman. Basically, he just tells him the history, tells him about the previous caretaker Grady, Charles Grady, not Delmont Grady, who we'll meet later, who killed his family and himself. And you could tell right away already that Jack's got a little something going on behind the eyes.
Here's what I think. All right, this is what I think, because I haven't seen it, and I saw it a couple years ago the last time. And I know people a lot of times talk about, and I think I've said it before, like that. He's already a little nutty in the interview. I don't think he is a little nutty in the interview. What I do think, I think this is the only time in the movie that you see him being totally not what he is. He's being so fake to get the job, because when it comes down to it, this movie is, there's a lot of things here, alcoholism and abuse, but Jack, I think, probably before, even in early days of their relationship, I think Jack was just a piece of shit husband to her. Like, I guess I just never thought of it before. Like, I probably thought they were probably happy, and then he became a drunk, and then the thing with Danny happened. And now that I watch this, I go, I think this guy was just always a fucking asshole.
Always, yeah.
Always irritate. Like the scene where they're actually driving up to the hotel to like actually take the job.
Yeah.
He just seems so like resentful of them in such a small way. Like when Danny says he's hungry, well, you should have ate your breakfast. Like,
that's right. Exactly. I pointed that out when that scene came up. Yeah.
Yeah. He just seems like a dirtbag. So the transformation is not that hard to believe, but the interview scene is like, he's trying to be an everyman. He wants the job. He'll do whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure. And meanwhile, you get this interspersed with, Danny and Wendy back at home or wherever they're staying, in his abilities, and eating a sandwich. And you could tell, he has a premonition about the hotel and doesn't want to go there. And Shelley Duvall, Wendy, is being the mom and saying, "Oh, it's great. Nothing's wrong. Everything's good." And it goes back and forth between the two.
And we also, in that scene, learn a couple things. We learn that Danny has a friend named Tony, who she describes as his imaginary friend. And Danny basically says he's the boy that lives in my mouth.
Yeah.
And Tony has a very distinctive separate voice from Danny, and, Red Rum, that thing that everybody always jokes about. And then we also learn because she has a doctor brought in because Danny has a spell. And the doctor, is asking her questions. And in the line of questions, she says that, well, Danny suffered an injury and missed a lot of school at one point. Why did he miss school? What was the injury? And it's a great scene because she's, she's doing that. Like, I'm not making light of it. She's doing that abused woman thing where she is making an excuse for her piece of shit husband.
I love the way this whole scene unpacks. It's so good. It's like, it's exposition for us, so we know. But it's so perfectly done. And, the questions that the doctor is asking and the way, like you said, that Wendy's answering, she's a total victim, but she's trying to hide it.
And the doctor
sits there. She's just got this look. She's just staring like, what she's thinking.
I also think it's incredibly 1980 of Wendy to offer her doctor a cigarette. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, she's got the long ash at the end.
Yeah. So they end up heading up. He gets the job. They head up, and we get kind of the tour scene where Ullman is showing everybody around. Now, like you said, he's going to be the caretaker of this place. What is the deal with this place? It shuts down, but for how long, Minister?
It shuts down. I forget the dates. I didn't write them, but like October to May.
October to May. Turned to Heather and said, and I'll ask you the same question. Do you think you could do that? I couldn't.
Ooh, from October to May. I don't mind my solitude, but damn, that's a long time to be trapped and, no communication with the outside, nowhere to go.
I love my solitude, but Heather made it a point, and it makes sense that like it's not so much the being there with your family, it's the idea of if I have to leave here, I might not be able to.
Yeah.
Like I am stuck. And like, you know, there's one snowcat, but that's still hairy, you know, like that's not, it's not, you know, he says, oh, it's just like driving a car, but it's not like driving a car. It's like driving a fucking snowcat.
Yeah.
So they're touring the place. Ullman is showing him around, and then they meet Dick Halloran. Dick is the kindly, older black gentleman who is the cook. We mentioned earlier in a later scene when they showed Dick's house, he has, the posters of the giant tittied women. I've always kind of liked Dick very much because he reminds me of my grandfather. My grandmother died before I was born, and my grandfather never had a girlfriend, nothing. He was just my grandfather. And when I was a young guy, when I was a kid, 7, 8, 9, I used to sleep over my grandfather's house sometimes on weekends, and I always slept in his, like, he had like a upstairs, like, den, living room type thing with a fold-out bed. And of course, I'm like 7, 8, 9, 10. So, you know, sometimes, you wake up in the middle of the night, and I remember as a kid, I popped open the closet in that room, and I was snooping, and up on the top shelf, I found my grandfather's, like, immense Playboy collection. He was a subscriber. They all had his name and address on them. And I used to like look, at the Playboys. I was a young guy, and I'll freely admit I was not jacking it then. I was a kid.
You weren't touching yourself.
I wasn't touching myself, but I was learning. And I just, every time I see this movie and I see that like Dick Halloran, who by the way, Scatman Crothers during filming was 69. So he is probably around my grandfather's age when I was a little kid. He's another old guy that just likes titties. And I just think that's beautiful. I think that's beautiful.
And afros that are at least like a 4-foot diameter.
Afros and gigantic, juicy titties.
Yeah.
Good for him. But anyways, and at one point, while he's kind of showing Wendy around, he calls Danny Doc, which is their nickname for Danny. And she's like, how did you know we call him Doc? And you could tell he's backpedaling. He's like, oh, I heard you say it. She's like, I don't think we said it. And he's like, well, I think he just looks like a Doc. And he goes into like a little, what's up, Doc? A little Bugs Bunny. But then during a conversation that he's having with Ullman and everybody, he turns to Danny, and what the fuck does he do, Manster?
Yeah, he just starts telepathically talking to him. He's like, you like ice cream?
Yeah.
And that's freaky because you got two conversations going on, one out of your mouth and one out of your brain. And it's a little unsettling, but Danny's looking at him like his eyes open, like, really? There's somebody else? And
then Halloran says to him, can Danny stick with me while you go do the rest of this? I'm going to give him some ice cream. And it's a total fucking, ruse, to get him to be able to talk openly. And he starts asking him, and Danny is just very kind of like reserved about, what he can do. But Dick tells him, like, when I was a little kid, I could have entire conversations with my grandmother without ever opening our mouths. And he tells him it's called, my grandmother and me called it the shine. Then they start talking about the hotel, right?
Yeah. And this conversation is so good. I mean, for a young boy, I don't know, Danny's like 7, 8.
Yeah, he's young. Yeah.
And he just starts asking him about the hotel. He's like, is this bad? Is this a bad place? And ask him about 237. So as a little boy, he's asking all the right questions.
And Dick doesn't seem too concerned about the Overlook necessarily, but when he mentions 237, he tells him, you have no business going in that room.
Yeah.
Don't go in that room. And of course, it's going to happen as the movie goes along, but when you tell a little kid, don't do this, clearly it's going to happen at some point. And
especially when the door, is opened up.
Right. When the door magically opens up.
By magic. Yeah.
So as they're talking, we get like just smash edit with a title card saying, I think, what is it?
1 month later at that point. Yeah.
So Manster, how's everything going 1 month in?
Well, Jack's writing is going nowhere, but Danny and Wendy are having fun going through the hedge maze, and at first there's no snow, but then there's snow, and Jack does discover a model of the maze in one of the rooms in the hotel, like a big lounge or something, and that's pretty cool. I like the scene where he's looking down. I mean, I don't know. I think some people think that he actually sees them in the maze, but I think it's just a transition.
No, that's a great transition.
Yeah,
they're out playing in the maze. He's looking at the maze, and then it like shows them in the maze, and then it just follows through until you're in the maze.
Yeah.
difference between the book and the movie is that the maze does not exist in the book, and in the 1997 miniseries, which, by the way, is closer to the book.
Much closer, yeah.
It is topiary animals that come to life. And Kubrick said he couldn't do it because there was no technology at that point to make it look real.
You could do it now with CGI. I don't know how great it would look, but I've seen it. I mean, I've seen topiary animals moving in movies.
Yeah, I think the maze is a better choice for this movie.
I think so too. I mean, I loved the animals reading the book. I remember loving that. But I think for the movie purposes, the maze is good.
So
it's great.
They don't really ever talk about Jack's duties as a caretaker so much. They just kind of mention, any repair that needs to be done, turn on the furnace in different areas of the hotel. I will say, having read the book in my 20s, I do remember, and I know it plays into it at the end, that the boiler is a huge part of the fucking...
It's huge in the
book. Of the book. Like, if you don't burp the boiler, this place could blow up. And they only show Wendy, not even Jack, at one point kind of checking the boiler.
Yep.
They're there. He's trying to write the great American novel. And
he's starting to have outbursts, and you could see his mental health deteriorating.
And this is the problem that people like Stephen King, or people that aren't fans of this movie who love the book have with this movie, is that in the book, it's a slow burn where he is slowly unraveling. And he's contending with, his alcoholism and kind of like his annoyance with his family. But in this, they're like, he just goes immediately. I don't think he just goes immediately. I think in this version of the story, he's already just such a kind of a irritated cunt that it just starts to, he's with these two people that he kind of holds in contempt. For
the way he treats them is despicable.
Yeah, he's not a good dude at all. I don't think that there's, and I think that comes into play in Dr. Sleep a little bit,
right.
But we'll talk about that.
And he's not even, at this point, he's not even typing. He's constantly throwing the tennis ball against the wall.
He's just not doing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like you said, he has a couple of outbursts. He kind of gets shitty with her. She's just trying so hard to keep their family together. And he just keeps on kind of putting her down, in little ways. And, I want to skip ahead a little bit to the scene where she comes into the room when he's trying to write.
Yeah.
Because he's so harsh to her in that scene. He essentially tells her that, when I'm in here, I'm working. Don't come in to offer me lemonade or food, or come in to talk to me. I'm in here to do a job. And then he kind of outbursts and I can't fucking get it done. And then he says something to her that I literally tried imagining myself saying to the woman I loved. He's just now get the fuck out of here. I can't picture saying, get the fuck out of here to somebody that I genuinely cared for, my partner. I don't know, man. Again, I've seen this movie a million times, but doing it for the show, I found him so fucking even more deplorable.
He is. Absolutely. I don't even say that, if I'm annoyed at someone that I don't like.
Yeah,
you have to push me to get that, but man.
I feel like I'm sure like everybody else, I've had my moments, but he just says it with such vitriol for her. And all she's doing is coming in and, and here's the thing. He has
just
nothing.
Checking in. That's it. She's just checking in.
Nothing but time. He's there for 5 fucking months at least. So he's going to have time to write. So if your wife if she comes in every day, 10 times a day, then maybe, hey, look, you're distracting me a little bit, stop by 3 times a day. But he is just get the fuck out of my face. And this is also kind of corresponding with weird things starting to happen.
Oh yeah.
In the hotel. Lloyd, what are some of the things that kind of start to happen here?
We see Danny doing a lot of his riding his tricycle or big wheel or whatever.
It's a big wheel. Lloyd, it's a big wheel.
Yeah, it's a big wheel. Around fantastic scenes. And the whole when he's transitioning from carpet to hardwood to carpet to hardwood.
I was just going to say the sound design.
Oh, that was unintentional. When they were listening to that, when Kubrick played that back, he was like, "Wow, bonus."
Oh,
never even intended.
It's incredible.
And then
Yeah, every time he hits the hardwood, it's incredible. Yeah.
So he's going around and around, and of course, as he's driving around, he's seeing his visions. He's already seen the blood, pouring out of the elevators. He saw that back at home before they even went to the hotel, but he sees that over and over. He sees the twins in different locations, and there's that another scene where he drives his big wheel by room 237. Yeah, that's kind of freaky. Even though there's nothing there, it's still kind of freaky.
Yeah, he doesn't go in the first time, right? He just kind of
looks at it
and then takes off.
Yeah,
he does the baller move, which I don't understand, but I love it every time I see it. He gets back on his big wheel and then he pushes the rear wheel.
Yeah,
do you know what I'm talking about? Like,
I know.
Did that make him go faster? But he pushes the rear wheel and then
with his
goes.
foot, like it's like.
No, he does it with his hand.
Oh, with the hand. Oh, okay.
He reaches back and he pushes the rear wheel and then he goes. Like, this kid's a baller.
So he does that a number of times. What other things? Well, other than all the stuff that Jack's going through.
Jack is just, he is just like you said, starting to slowly lose it. And it kind of culminates.
Wendy's concerned about the phone lines and then indeed the phone lines do go down.
Right. The phone lines go down, so they have to keep the radio on constantly. And she's contacting the ranger station. Keep in touch and don't shut your radio off again.
Over.
Yeah, that's a great CB conversation. Over and out.
Yeah.
And she's still chipper and she's still pretty cheery. But eventually, at some point, Danny goes back to 237 and the door is open, so he goes inside.
Right. And now this is where everything starts culminating.
And as he goes inside, do we see her through his eyes or no?
No, we never see him. We never see what he sees in the room.
Okay. So this scene here had me really thinking, and I want to ask you if it hit you a different way. Danny goes in the room, and then Jack is writing in his area. Wendy comes into Jack's area, all panicked, and says, "Jack, we're not alone. There's a crazy woman in the hotel with us, and she choked Danny." And Danny has some bruises on his neck, right?
Yeah.
So she's telling Jack this, and Jack is basically dismissing her. She's like,
So you jumped ahead a little bit.
Okay. All right.
So at the same time Danny goes in the room, Wendy hears Jack screaming and crying and stuff. So he's having a nightmare while writing at the table.
Correct.
And by the way, I don't know if you noticed, but the typewriter also changes. At first it's a white typewriter and then it's a big gray typewriter.
I did not notice that.
Just randomly changes.
Okay.
Another unsettling weird thing.
And he tells her in the dream.
Yeah, his dream was that he was chopping them up to pieces with an axe.
Yeah.
And I think that's when Danny comes in and, they see him and he's not communicating. He's sucking his thumb. And he says, they get out of him that he was in that room 237.
Okay. All right. So I fucked all that up before. So
that just happens a little after.
No. But the point I'm trying to make. So, okay. So you're right. Has the nightmare, which obviously saying that nightmare to her might put a thought into her head. Danny comes in, sucking his thumb, bruises on his neck, and she accuses him.
Right.
And says, "You did this to him, you motherfucker, you hurt him," and he's basically saying, "I didn't do it," and she picks Danny up and leaves with him. Okay? Then Jack goes, is that where he goes and drinks?
Then I believe he goes to the bar. Yeah.
He goes to the bar.
He goes to the gold room and meets Lloyd.
He goes to the gold room. He sits down in this very empty ballroom, and all of a sudden he looks up, and there's Lloyd the bartender. And, they kind of have this conversation.
My favorite scene in the movie. And
it's great.
Where he's going down and he looks, and all of a sudden he recognizes someone in front of him. And when I'm watching it, and I've said this before, I always go, "Hi, Jack." And then he goes, "Hi, Lloyd."
And they have this conversation, and well, I've had 220s and 210s in my wallet that are not going to get spent, so let's have a little bit of a drink. And again, let's remember this is a guy who's a recovering alcoholic, and this bartender, this ghost, what is it?
Yep.
Is essentially trying to get him to drink. Now, there's no alcohol. Earlier in the movie, Ullman said we have to take the alcohol off the premises because it's an insurance thing. So, but Lloyd the bartender manages to slip him some Jack Daniels.
Some ghostly JD.
Gives him some ghostly JD, a glass, and when Jack goes to open up his wallet, there's no money in it, and Lloyd tells him, your money's no good here.
Right.
So Jack starts to drink, and he's kind of complaining about, like, his wife, and he even brings up the incident. The incident where he abused Danny was he was drunk. Danny had gotten a hold of some of his papers. He was a teacher at the time and spread them out everywhere. And he said he grabbed Danny by the arm, as a parent might grab a kid by the arm, but 1 pound too many of torque, or whatever he says,
1 pound, foot pound too much.
He's he's trying to like make it as an excuse. He's in the bar, he's drinking, talking to Lloyd. Now this is the part I wanted to bring up before when I kind of screwed up the time on it. So she accused him in the room of hurting Danny and then took Danny away. He's in the bar. She shows up in the bar and says, Jack, there's someone else in the hotel with us. There's a crazy woman in one of the rooms, and she choked Danny. You have to go check it out. Now, here's my question that I had never thought of before.
Okay.
She accused Jack literally just 10 minutes prior. Yeah. 10 minutes ago. Now she's coming in the room and telling him almost like he doesn't know what happened to Danny. Like she's saying, Danny's been hurt. There's somebody else in the hotel.
Huh.
Was the part where she comes in and blames him in his head and not real? There's never a point where she says, I'm sorry I said that about you. Danny told me there's a woman in the... She comes in and she's like...
I'm going to have to watch that again.
Danny's been hurt. There's a woman in the hotel. She doesn't ever acknowledge the fact that he already knew Danny was hurt, and they didn't even discuss how she had blamed him. So I said to myself, was the initial encounter like him still in his little dream or whatever? I don't know, but I think it's something to think about.
All right, so that's something I have to rewatch to see if I get that same impression.
Yeah,
because I never have before, but
first time I ever had it. She comes in.
Yeah. Every time you see a movie like this, you pick things up.
So he goes up to room 237, and other than the world's most clashing and terrible decor, Manster, what does he find there?
Well, he finds a naked woman in the bathtub who, tosses aside the curtain, gets up, totally buck naked. Great little scene, and goes up to him and. They start making out, and as he looks into the mirror, he just sees an old hag who's got like
such a wet sore, such a giant
sore. Like if you were in the bathtub for 50 years, your skin was all sloughed off in the sore areas. It's so disgusting. And then the woman, of course, is just cackling at him. This is an older woman now, and she's just cackling at him the whole time. She's
so gross. Oh man, that's sore. Every time I see it, and he looks in the mirror and realizes he's hugging like a 90-year-old, like fucking. She looks like a wet thumb, except she's got this big gray sore on her ass.
Yeah, and then I think more on her side and shoulder.
and then he's backing out of the room, like he's walking backwards, like Homer into the bush.
Yeah, right.
He's walking backwards. So he leaves. Okay, so where do we go from here, Master?
Well, basically, he talks again with Wendy and goes back to the room and says, no, I didn't see anything. And then basically blames Danny. It's like he did it to himself. He inflicted those wounds on himself. And then I think that's when Wendy says, all right, let's go.
Yeah, she wants to leave. Yeah. And he gives her the whole speech about duty and, it's on his word. And, I'm here to look after the Overlook Hotel from whenever to whenever. So at what point? Okay, so
Danny enters into his trance and he starts contacting Dick.
That's what I was going to say.
Jack goes back to the gold room and it's now filled with guests and having a party.
Black tie ball happening. Danny goes into the trance, and then we see Scatman Crothers, we see Halloran on the bed, titty lady, and he is connected to him. And from this point, his side of the story is he realizes that something's wrong. He can't get through to them because the phone lines are down. And he decides he's got to fly from, I think he's in Miami, back to Colorado to go check on them. Spoiler alert, it's not going to end well for him. Another spoiler.
It's 1 minute in the hotel.
Yeah, another spoiler alert is that in the book he lives. So,
And there's no axe. It's a roque mallet.
yes, yeah, he does not use an axe in the book. It's a mallet. Yes, so Jack goes to the ballroom and has another conversation with Lloyd, and then he ends up getting
He gets a drink spilled on him from Grady.
Grady, who is a waiter apparently.
This Grady is Delmont Grady. And every time I've seen this, I always thought, oh, that's Grady, the guy who killed his family.
Well, that's part
And
of
he
the...
even says, no, I didn't kill my family. It's a different name, but who knows?
So some of the trivia stuff I was reading today was that it's supposed to line up with the idea of Charles Grady was the 1970 caretaker that went nuts and killed his family, but then there was a Delmar Grady as well earlier on, and then obviously, we're going to get to it, but we have Jack Torrance who repeats the cycle, and then as the movie ends, we find out that there was another Jack Torrance or someone that looked like him there. It's
all very ambiguous and unexplained. So
right. So Grady says to him, "I'm very sorry, sir. You're the guest here. Let's go into the bathroom, and I'm going to give you a quick hand job." No, he says,
They have a fantastic conversation in the bathroom.
Yeah. Talk about it a little bit.
I don't even know all the things, but I just love their speech, the speech patterns and the old style of speaking. And I love that he says, you have to correct your wife and child.
Yeah.
I corrected my wife and child.
Yeah. Well, because Jack says to him, he goes, "I know who you are. You're the prior caretaker." And this version, this ghost or whatever it is like, "No, that's not me."
Right.
And then you see him start to realize who he is or start to reveal who he is. But I feel like it's like he doesn't know. And then he's like, and he seems like he remembers. And then he says to him, he goes, like you just said, you're going to have to correct them. And it's like, oh shit.
I love that term. It's
correct.
So awesome.
Correct. And I also love the bathroom, the red and white.
Dark red and white. Oh, man. So iconic.
This movie being made in the late 70s and released in 1980, people I was a kid. I was born in 1975. You're a little bit older, so you were more of like a 10, 11-year-old around those times. People who didn't live it don't remember the colors and the decor of the mid 70s and early 80s, right? Like everything was either bright colors or
avocado
orange,
green, and
avocado
orange.
green, brown, muted Caldor dirt rainbow colors, or like bright red, like the bathroom is. So he tells him, you got to correct him. So he leaves, and he decides he's going to go, I guess, and correct him at this point. What happens next, Master?
I believe we don't see it. I know Wendy. Oh no, that was a little later. It must be at this time. We never see it. But he sabotages the radio and the snowcat.
They show the radio. He pulls he
pulls the capacitors out of the radio. That's right. And then I guess we go back to Dick in Florida, having premonitions and trying to get up, figure out a way to get up there. And I think this is where we start seeing Danny saying red rum for the first time.
Yeah, red rum.
Not Danny, but Tony.
Yeah, Danny's kind of gone almost catatonic.
Yeah, Danny's gone.
Shelley Duvall there. Wendy is just kind of hanging with him and waiting to see, what's going to happen with Jack. And Jack comes back and he's like, he tells her, there's nobody there. And, and that, like you said, that's where they have the fight about it was Danny. And that's where Master, is this where she finds the manuscript at this point?
Yeah, this is where she discovers Jack's typewriter and the manuscript and piles of pages that all say, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, in many different styles. Some look like poems, some are like lots of typos. It's really great. It's got to be like 3 inches thick.
One of them looks like a Christmas tree, I think. Yeah, that's great. But yeah, and I was reading about this today. One of the things that one of the reviewers of this film gave it credit for was that any other director in this scene while she's looking at this, and she's getting horrified because she's realizing that, okay, my husband has been working on this.
She's literally looking at every single page.
Yeah, she's going through every page.
Maybe it's just the top 5 pages. No.
She's hoping
700 pages.
She's hoping by page 200 she finds a story page. It's not. So she's like, oh my God, he's nuts. And the reviewer had said so many other directors would have had like a jump scare shot where like he appears over her shoulder, make you jump. But there's not. We go to a wide shot and he just walks in the room. It's so much more effective because it's like she's been caught. It's not like we're trying to make you jump, because this movie's not about jump scares.
There's no jump scares in this movie. Not one.
So he kind of walks in on her and he's like, what are you doing? And she is just, this is the point where Shelley Duvall has probably been pushed to her ultimate limit.
Yeah.
And stay away from me, Jack. We got to get out of here. And he is just.
This is a whole cat and mouse thing. It's insane. Like, he's just berating her and saying all this shit. And, she's backing up. She backs up through the whole room all the way to the stairs. And, you got that staircase that comes down on both sides. And she's backing up. And he's doing the thing where he's grabbing at her with his hands. And he says, my favorite line is, Wendy, darling, light of my life, I'm not going to hurt you. You didn't let me finish. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to bash your brains the fuck in.
Yeah.
And she's, Jack. And she's half-ass swatted at him, right?
She's swatting at him half-ass with that super choke on the bat, until he does, like, at the very end when they get to the top of the stairs, she kind of makes the move and she pops him.
Yeah, he sorts of lunges at her, and she gets him popped right on the top of the head.
Top of the head. He falls all the way down, and we don't know it at this point, but she clearly fucked his leg up too, because he's limping for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, he hurt his ankle going down.
So the next scene is her dragging him into the walk-in, cooler,
pantry.
I guess. Pantry.
Yeah.
It's not a freezer, but it's
no,
like
not
pantry.
the freezer. No.
Shuts him in there, locks him in there. And they have this great conversation between each other through the door.
With that amazing scene, like looking up from underneath him.
Yeah. So his side is filmed from underneath. And also, I notice this every time, what is with that super long doorknob?
I don't know what that is, but it's so effective. I don't know.
Yeah. So he's holding the doorknob. I often wonder,
maybe it has to do with the locking mechanism. I don't know.
It's weird. He's holding the doorknob. He's got his head against the door, and he's telling her, let him out. And she's like, Jack, me and Danny are going to leave without you. And then because he's trying to play it at first. I'm sorry. Let me out. And then when she says she's going to leave, he has that kind of switch where he's like, the fuck you are.
Yeah.
Cause have you checked the radio or the snowcat lately? And she's just kind of like, oh shit. So she runs away, goes outside into the frigid fucking cold, and gets the snowcat, and he's cut the fucking distributor cap and the wires off at some point. So, and the whole time she's doing this, she's running around with this giant butcher's knife.
Yeah, and she picked it up when she dropped him or dumped him in the pantry.
Now, Manster, let's talk about this real quick. So now he's in the pantry, she's out there, and she's going to get back up to Danny because she wants to figure out how to get out of here. She leaves him in the pantry. He starts talking to Grady again.
Yeah, so he's in sight unseen. You don't ever see Grady.
You never see him.
That's another thing that I'll just mention now. Every time that Jack's talking to a ghost or something like that, there's a theory that there's always a mirror in the scene.
I've heard that,
Except for in this scene, but there is a reflective door in front of them.
Right.
Like the metal door. So, none of these things are actually seen by anybody else, but they're seen by him. And it's assumed that he's always just talking to himself. But this is where you have to suspend all disbelief because something happens here that you cannot explain.
Every other scene in the movie that has what you would call a ghost, there's really no true physical interaction, right? Like he hugs the old woman, but who knows if he did or he didn't. There's no effect there, really. He's not wet. He drinks the drink that Lloyd gives him, but doesn't seem drunk or anything. These all seem like they're in his mind, but something opens the door, and it's not her. She's the only other person there, and it's not Danny. They're the only two people there. So we have to think at this point that the ghost of Grady, whose, I guess, cycle Jack is taking over as the murderous caretaker, it has let him out. Now, the other half of it is, like you said, is that in every scene there's mirrors, but then as Wendy is running through the hotel later on, I'm skipping a little bit, but she sees many things. She sees a guy in a dog costume blowing a guy in a tuxedo, right? Like nobody wanted that, but she sees it. So I guess, I don't know, maybe it's a ghost story. I do think I only saw Dr. Sleep once, but I think Dr. Sleep leaned kind of heavily into that being the case.
Yeah, that there were ghosts.
That when they go back to the Overlook, but we'll do an episode on that because
we'll get to Dr. Sleep. We were supposed to do it about a year ago. But.
Yeah, we'll do it. So Jack gets out and he hears a snowcat outside. He's looking for Danny. He's looking for Wendy. He's screaming their names out. Yeah,
when you're back in the bedroom, Danny's really he's saying red rum a lot now.
Yes.
Red rum. And at the time, Wendy is in bed, sleeping. The knife is on the table next to her. And he just keeps saying over and over, red rum, red rum. Then he gets a lipstick off of the dresser, and he starts writing red rum on the door to the bathroom. Okay. And Wendy wakes up because it's getting really loud now. Red rum! And Wendy wakes up and sees him, and you get that awesome music. Like, they repeat that music a lot where it's like chittery sort of music and screechy. Yeah. And she looks in the mirror and she sees what Danny wrote. Well, red rum in a mirror looks just like murder. And she takes the knife from Danny, and right at the same time, Jack comes to the door, and he's starting to bash the outer door, not the door into the room, but the outer door that leads to the suite.
Right. Has he already killed Halloran?
Okay. Not yet.
Okay.
So at that point, Wendy takes Danny into the bathroom, takes the knife with her, locks the door, and just starts trying to open a window that leads outside. There's a big, giant snowdrift, so the snow's right up to the window. But of course, a window like that can't open fully because people could just jump out randomly. Right. So it only opens halfway. And Jack makes it through the first door and then comes to the second door and does his great little thing. He starts saying, little wolf, or little pig, let me come in. And he's doing all these things with his lips and tongue and fingers. It's really great.
Jack Nicholson apparently at some point in his life was a volunteer fire marshal or fireman.
Yes, I heard that.
And they said that initially they had to break a lot of doors, and they, I guess, initially were trying to build them lighter, but he had no problem with the axe. And he's got good form. If you watch it, he's got
great form.
Yeah. He goes right through that. And it's funny, too, because I think every single time I ever see this movie, I forget that he axes his way through two doors.
Yep.
Because you expect that first door to be the here's Johnny, and it's not. That's the door to get into the room, and then it's the bathroom door, which he does the little pig, smashes the door, and of course, like, let's just be honest, like, top 10 most iconic scenes in a movie ever,
all time.
You know, the splintered door, and then Jack Nicholson ad-libbing, by the way.
Yeah.
Here's Johnny, the famous, Johnny Carson Tonight Show intro. If it's not clear that Shelley Duvall has been raked over the coals, she is
fucking like so scared and terrified in this scene. That is real. That's real terror. She's not just acting there.
I would be terrified if an axe was coming through a door and that motherfucker was on the other side of it for sure. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Danny's been out the window. Danny got out the window.
Danny gets out the window.
His way outside for whatever reason. I don't know. He just comes right back in.
And then does she go out the window? I can't remember.
No, she cannot get out the window.
How do we get to Halloran?
Well, so Jack is smashing through the door, does his Here Johnny, and then reaches through with his left hand to open the doorknob. She slices his hand with the knife. That's when he hears the snowcat in Halloran. So he takes off to go investigate that.
And as Lloyd said a minute ago, Halloran has now traveled, however many miles across
planes,
the sky.
Trains, automobiles, and snowcats.
Snowcats. This guy has done it all just to help these people. He gets out of the snowcat. He gets into the open door. He sees the doors are open in the front. He goes in and he's just screaming, kind of yelling out, "Hello, is anybody here? Is anybody here?" His death scene is so fucking effective because we just said before there isn't a jump scare in this movie. Maybe there is one. Because I can imagine the first time you see this, maybe not expecting that because he's kind of just walking through maybe the kitchen area or something.
He's walking through the lounge in the hallway and Jack just happens to be behind a post right at that corner. And as he comes around the corner, he just like gets him right in the fucking middle of the chest with an axe.
He screams and he axes
One
him.
shot.
One shot. And he is just like kind of like holding on, and Halloran's dying and blood everywhere, and Halloran goes down.
And that's when Danny at this point has hidden inside of some low, like in the scene from Jurassic Park, like where the kids were in that room and they got in one of those cabinets.
I 100%, and I've seen this movie a bunch, but again, I 100% said to myself, is this where Spielberg got the raptor scene?
Yeah.
Like, was that even like kind of like a thought? Because it's the same. He hides inside of like a kitchen metal cabinet.
Yep.
And Jack walks in the room. It's very similar. Little kid being preyed upon by something evil. I said to myself, oh shit. I wonder if that's where
I think it has
from.
to be. It has to be from that scene. That's why I said, I was like, that's just like that. And then Danny takes off, because Danny's a lot quicker than Jack, and Jack with a like busted up ankle, and runs out the front door into the hedge maze. And that's when you get all the howling and stuff from Jack as he's, Danny, I'm gonna get you.
There's one part when he's following him into the maze where he calls him Dan. And I don't know why that strikes me, but it's like, he's a little kid. He's Danny, but like, he's like, I'm right behind you, Dan. I'm like, it's so weird. Cause like,
interesting. That's a choice.
It's like, he's not his father anymore. He is just like a fucking, ooh, I'm leaving that in. That was a fucking powerful sneeze.
I muted it, didn't I?
No. That was a lot of shit. Are you telling me
I'm not on mute right now?
You're not. I hear every word you're saying.
Fuck.
I hear every word you're saying. All right. So he chases him into the hedge maze, and it's obviously freezing outside. Danny is kind of running around. Danny has been in the maze before. We don't know if Jack has. They never really talked about that. But they did make it a point to say, don't go in the maze unless you have an hour to try to figure out how to get out of it. So it's not easy. At one point, Danny does something very clever for a young guy. What does he do, Manster, to try to fool Jack?
So Danny has been through this maze, 100 times. And as he's going, he's taking every freaking little turn he can. And then he gets to a point where he's like, all right, I can't do this forever. He backtracks, steps backwards over his own footsteps, and gets far enough that he could go into a little, side little alley, and then covers up his sort of steps that he took, and then hides behind the hedge on the opposite side of where Jack would be.
Yep. And I mean, really, he kind of stays there for a while. And then does he run out? He runs out.
Well, so Jack gets to the end, and then he really starts howling at the end because he's like, all right, I've been had. And I think Jack just keeps foraging on. So as soon as Jack keeps going forward, Danny bails and goes back out the other way.
Danny runs back out and
meets his mom.
Wendy meets him there, and they get into Halloran's Snowcat, which obviously works, and they start taking off. And as they're taking off, and like we get the idea that they're heading to safety, we don't get like the typical horror movie thing where Jack runs out and jumps on. No, we get a smash cut to frozen ass fucking Jack.
I love that they don't do that. It's so great that they don't do that because every other movie ever made does that.
Yeah. And it's clear that, I mean, it's probably the next morning, but it's clear he's been there for a while because like he's got snow drifts up to his shoulders. Like he's buried in snow basically. And his eyes are so creepily like in like a weird position.
Yeah. Like sort of looking up, whatever it is. Yeah.
The end of the book, I'll just talk about real quick, builds on the whole boiler room thing, where eventually the boiler explodes but they still get away. Halloran and Wendy and Danny get away, but the boiler explodes and destroys the Overlook. In this version, the Overlook is still standing, and that's really the end of the movie. We do get the last shot, Manster, that we talked about. Go ahead and explain that.
Yeah, so we get the last shot inside the hotel. You're just slowly moving forward into a wall of pictures that you've seen, 100 times throughout the movie. But this time it zooms right up into one of the pictures, and then you get 3 levels of zooming where you see the picture, you see a bunch of people, and then as it gets closer, you see the guy in the front. Looks like Jack. It's a skinnier, not older, but like more old-timey version of Jack.
Slick back hair.
And then it says 1921, like July 4th or whatever.
July 4th, 1921. And it is a real picture from 1920 that they superimposed or airbrushed Jack Nicholson's face onto that one guy.
Right.
So the actual picture with all the flapper women and all the guys with hats on, like that kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, is real.
All the partiers.
All the partiers. All right.
And then that's it. It's over. And you're left with like this, what the hell did I just see?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely one of filmdom's like kind of like what was that all about moments, but there's a lot of theories out there, and I'm sure Lloyd will find out about it when he reads that big old tome that Candy got him.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the box office.
What's in the box? What's in the fucking box?
All right, so The Shining, which I believe was made for a budget of $19 million, I believe. I had that written in my notepad, and it seems right. So if Manster knows anything different, he could jump in on that. Ended up in the year of 1980 at number 12. It grossed $44 million. Couple of the films of 1980, if you want to know how that year shook out, I'll give you a couple. Number one, as we've talked about many times, making $203 million was Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Number 5, making $70 million was Any Which Way You Can.
Speaking of Clint.
Yeah, Clint, there again. If you want to go past number 12, actually, what's interesting? At number 11, $49 million was Popeye. So,
oh yeah, right.
So Duvall has the 11th and 12th. Number 14, Caddyshack, $39 million. And at number 15, just to throw it in there because it's something we've done before, Friday the 13th, the original, $39 million.
Wow.
Yep. All right. Let's rate this thing.
Let's rock!
0 to 5, 0 being the worst thing ever, 5 being the best thing ever. Quarter and half scale optional. I'm going to let Manster go first because on this one, I know he's going to give it a 5. So I feel confident that this won't be like just like a nervous 5. Like 5! I give it a 5! Delta Force with Chuck Norris. 5! I didn't know what else to do.
Boy, I have so many notes here. I don't know which of these I'm going to pick to talk about. Anyway, Kubrick, his masterful, I guess I would say unethical. I don't know. Was he unethical or was he just fucking bleeding people dry because he's an asshole?
Yeah, I mean, unethical, I think, would indicate he did something that was...
Yeah, maybe not unethical.
Yeah, like, no, I mean, it's definitely,
what you're in for. If you're going to work for this guy, you know what you're in for.
At this point, what I mean? It's not like this is his second movie. This is, Slim Pickens knew enough not to do it, right? So I'm sure people said, hey, look, he's going to do this, he's going to do that. And,
Yeah. Well, he creates a sense of unease basically from the very first tone, the very first frame of this movie. You've got all this imposing, I don't know, architecture and scenery, just the mountains and everything, and the soundscape is incredible. The cinematography is beautiful. You've got these long tracking shots that just draw you deeper and deeper. That's one of the things about this movie that I love so much is it really subverts a lot of established horror tropes. And granted, a lot of those tropes came after, and it doesn't do any of those, but it's extremely bright. How many horror movies do you know that take place all in pretty much the daytime?
Right.
I mean, there's no nighttime scenes in this movie other than them leaving. So it's very bright and well lit. It's so meticulously detailed. Like so many horror movies, you can't see details because it's so dark. There's no quick cuts. It's not fast paced. There's no jump scares. I guess you could argue the one with where Jack hits the axe and Dick. But the scenes in this thing, they take their time, right? They linger. Like Danny's driving around on his big wheel a long time. Like you would probably just get a couple seconds of that in any other movie, but you get that for 15, 20 seconds each time. But another thing is the movie is 2.5 hours, nearly 2.5, not quite. A horror movie shouldn't be more than an hour and a half. You know, get
Generally.
in, get out.
Yeah.
Generally, this movie's 2.5 hours, and it doesn't feel like it's too long. And then it's got so many iconic moments. You know, here's Johnny. You got the girls. Again, Danny on his big wheel. The elevators with the blood. The hallway carpet pattern. I mean, come on, that's like the best thing ever.
Yeah.
I've seen shirts and posters like that. That pattern is so meticulous, so awesome, so recognizable. All work, no play makes Jack a dull boy. All these things. I mean, there's so many. There's like a dozen iconic moments in this movie. And then you've got the ambiguity. So many things are unexplained, and there's so many inconsistencies. Like there's something I didn't even talk about, but it really gets me. There's a scene when Danny's in the hallway and he's playing with like toy cars and trucks, and he's on this carpet and a ball, like a tennis ball, rolls up out of nowhere. Right?
Yeah.
You remember that scene?
Yep.
So the tennis ball rolls up, and if you can remember the pattern, there's orange and then there's brown. The ball rolls up through one of these brown roads. And then immediately he stands up. But when he stands up, he's facing the opposite direction.
Okay.
When he stands up, everything is facing the other way. And that you would say, oh, that's an inconsistency. You know, someone didn't do their job. No. That is all intentional. It's all meant to make everything unsettling and uneasy and unexplainable. So it's a million things like that I really love. I wanted to see what Roger Ebert said. And one thing that he said, which is a really cool thing, I think it speaks to what we talked about a little bit, that the film does not have a reliable observer other than Dick Halloran. It's like you can't trust anybody's perspective in this movie.
Yeah, well, Jackson's saying Danny's a kid, and Wendy's, you know, like out of her mind, afraid for most of it.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so that just adds to the unease of the movie. I mean, it's a horror movie. It's supposed to make you feel icky, and it does. You know, Stanley Kubrick didn't want the story to fit together like in neat little pieces. It's just like it's fragmented. It seems like it's linear, but it's not. It's got things like I said with the layout, like the impossible layout of the rooms. So all of that, like the sum of all that, just to me, just makes this such a fantastic movie. I love the book, and I get what Stephen King says. You know, it's a different story than the book, but it has to be, and it's absolutely a 5.
I'm going to make it easier. It's a 5.
Sorry.
I know. Well, no, because you said everything I could have wanted to say. I will say I understand the people who might say, well, you know, it's a failure as an adaptation. 9 times out of 10, when something fails as an adaptation, it truly is. It's like, oh, that didn't work, or it's, you know, just it wasn't as good, or it didn't have the same things or feeling that I liked about what I read or whatever it's adapted from. This is the rare case where the failed adaptation has now become the thing that people think about more so than the original, right? I'm sure there are a ton of people out there that love the book, and I read the book and I thought the book was really good, but this is The Shining. And maybe Stephen King is a little salty because Stanley Kubrick kind of took his property and made it his property.
Yeah.
But you know, when people think of The Shining, they don't think of Steven Weber from Wings with a mallet and, you know, and the hedge, you know, that 1997 adaptation, or they don't generally think of the book. I don't think they immediately go elevators, blood, little kid, red rum, you know, crazed Shelley Duvall,
weird twin girls,
right? Weird twin girls, the whole 9 yards, filled with like dread, like the scenes you were talking about where Danny's riding the big wheel around and they're these long kind of uninterrupted cuts. They work because after he goes down 3 or 4 hallways, when he does that turn and those girls are standing there, that's fucking. It's not a jump scare, but that's fucking frightening as hell. And then, you know, so things like that. It is expertly done. I don't love everything I've seen of Kubrick's, but A Clockwork Orange was always a favorite movie of mine. It's kind of harder to watch as an adult, but I mean, the guy has like a real grasp, right? Like obviously he was a really good director.
Yeah.
And he takes a movie that is essentially about like the dissolution of a family and turns it into a horror film that kind of leans on the idea that maybe there's something ghostly going on. But in the end, this same shit would have happened if Jack never saw the ghosts or anything, if that's what they are. He was going to go crazy and try to kill his family no matter what. The supernatural element of it, it makes you question it at the end. Okay, so was Jack always crazy, or did the Overlook make him crazy? Was he acting for the Overlook? Would he have done it anyways? Those are all questions that I think are really interesting.
Yeah.
And this is a really simple movie, but like you said, there's a ton of stuff that makes you kind of go, things that make you go, This movie is kind of full of that stuff. Great cast. Jack Nicholson, you know, let's just be honest, his most iconic role, it might not be his best, and this is the guy that played the Joker to the extreme, but this is the role that probably, and I don't like to think of this, but probably when Jack Nicholson passes away, this might be the one that they show, you know, here's Johnny. They're going to show that. They're going to show that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Shelley Duvall is great in this. The Razzies, good thing that you rescinded that because that was a shitty move on your part. That was actually a really good performance. Danny Lloyd is actually really good, and it's sad in a way, but good for him for having a life outside of this. Scatman Carruthers, again, reminds me of my grandfather, loves big titties, and he's good in this. And, you know, I kind of do love the fact that, like, we are cheering him on. He is this kindly old man, and just the meanness of killing him is a choice in this movie, but it works because it kind of gives you that whole idea that there is no hope in this situation. Yeah, it's a 5. I love this movie. All right, Manster, tell everybody out there where they can find us.
You can find us on any of your podcatchers. And if you can rate us, that would be great. If you listen to this and this is the first time or the 350th time you've heard us, you know, if you haven't rated us, give us a rating. I know you like this episode. This is an episode that was near and dear to my heart, and I know you can tell that. You can find us on YouTube at The Pint, a pop culture podcast. On Instagram, it's at The Pint Pop, and you can be an Patreon, a Pint Insider on Patreon, www.patreon.com/The Pint, and I will lead this into you to finish it up. Here's Johnny.
Don't forget to go one last time, if you haven't gone already, to my friend Christy's coffee and tea website. It is harpoonholly.com. Follow her on Instagram at harpoon_holly. And if you go and you want to buy something, great teas, great coffees, mugs, printed shirts, all kinds of cool stuff, when you go to check out, don't forget for Frigid February, you go to the little discount code and type in PINT20 and you will get 20% off of an order. I have ordered a couple things off of there. Very good teas. So pretty pleased with Sugar on Top. Boost her up. Check her out. And if you like what you got with this discount, then check her out again. You know, go back. Say, hey, I like that place. I'm going to check it out again. So that's it. Manster, say the words.
See ya.
Here's Johnny.
It's over, Johnny. It's over!
Nothing is over! Nothing! You just don't turn it off!